Welcome to the Bible Journey. My name is Mark Greenham. I'm the pastor of adult ministries at Otterbein Church. This week I wanted to share an extra podcast with you because there's something that happens in Mark 5 that is just so wonderful, and there's such a rich background to this that I think will help us appreciate the story. So I wanted to give you this extra podcast. And the next podcast this week will cover chapter 6 and 7. As you read the three stories in Mark chapter 5, I encourage you to take notice of the posture of each section of the story, of each of the three stories. Focus on verse 6, verse 22, and verse 23. I think there's something we can learn about how to relate to Christ by looking at the posture of each person in those stories. The events of Mark 5 are also found in Matthew and Luke, but I want us to camp out for a moment on the moment of the healing of the sick woman. This story is found in verses 25 to 32, and they describe a woman who for 12 years has suffered from perpetual bleeding. The bleeding would have made her ritually unclean, and until she was healed, that meant she was prevented from entering the temple and was to remain apart from society. If you will, the discharge of her blood caused her to be discharged from society. She has spent all her money on physicians, and still no health and no healing has occurred. Jesus is in town, and she comes up with a desperate plan. I will cover my head, I will sneak through the crowd, and maybe I can touch Jesus, and maybe I will be healed. So check out her story. She had heard the reports about Jesus and came up behind him in the crowd and touched his garment. For she said to herself, if I touch even his garment, I will be made well. We learn in Matthew 9 that she touched the fringe, just the edge, the bottom edge, the fringe of his robe. And immediately the flow of blood was dried up, and she felt in her body that she was healed of her disease. Now, the reason this story is so amazing, and in order to appreciate it, we need to understand the importance of the hem or tassels worn on the robes of Jewish people. To understand this, we have to go back to the Old Testament in Numbers chapter 15. This will help us to understand. Numbers 15, verse 37 to 41 say this. The Lord said to Moses, speak to the people of Israel and tell them to make tassels on the corners of their garments throughout their generations, and to put a cord of blue on the tassel of each corner. Why? Why? This seems so meaningless to us and so insignificant, but why? And it shall be a tassel for you to look at and remember all the commandments of the Lord, to do them, not to follow after your own heart and your own eyes, which you were inclined to whore after. So you shall remember and do all my commandments, and be holy to your God. I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt to be your God. I am the Lord your God. So God commands his people to wear tassels on the hem of their robes as a visual reminder to know and obey the commands of God. You notice the repetition of God saying, I am your God. These tassels were a reminder to study and obey the law of God, and in the law of God you will discover that God is your Lord and he is the only true God. They were a reminder to be holy before God. Now, in Jesus' time, a rabbi's garment was even more important. For the hem and tassels, they would customize them to signify their authority and their identity as a rabbi. As such, the tassels and hem were considered the most holy part of the garment, or the robe. Now, imagine this desperate woman slowly walking up behind Jesus, reaching out, hoping to maybe touch Jesus as he walks by, and all she can reach is the tassel or the fringe of Jesus' robe. Whether intentionally or providentially, the woman touched the holiest part of Jesus' robe. And Jesus, instead of becoming defiled by the woman's touch, heals her in purity. You see, the purity and holiness of Jesus ends the impurity of the woman. Let's keep reading. And Jesus, perceiving in himself that power had gone out from him, immediately turned about in the crowd and said, Who touched my garments? And his disciples said, You see the crowd pressing around you, and you say, Who touched me? and he looked around to see who had done it. But the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came in fear and trembling and fell down before him and told him the whole truth. And he said to her, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your disease." Why did Jesus stop and do this? Jesus was probably being touched by lots of people and all this crowd of people. Why did Jesus stop and call out the woman? Gosh, you sort of think, hasn't she suffered enough? Wouldn't this embarrass her, or would others recognize her and judge her? And perhaps Jesus calls her out as an expression of grace and love. In essence, Jesus is saying, I'm glad you were healed. I don't want you to be some random person who got something from me. I want to know you personally. I want you to know that I love you. I want you to know that your faith pleases me. I want you to know that I have noticed you and you are important to me. So, in Mark 5, nestled between the exciting story of Jesus confronting and conquering a legion of demons and the miraculous event of bringing a little girl back from the dead, we get this snapshot of a desperate woman demonstrating a deep faith that resulted not just in physical healing, but a spiritual transformation. Men and women, I want you to know, Jesus is never too busy to notice you and never too overwhelmed to come to your aid. There are over 8 billion people on planet Earth, and Jesus notices you personally. And he's asking you to let him be the Lord of your life. May you find great joy in journey of reading the Bible this week.